Happy Monday, people. I feel like I'm a little bit late to the topic that I want to talk about today. It's very much into the back to school season, and I have some back to school thoughts from a therapy perspective, things that have been going through my mind. I know most people are back, and this is specifically for probably parents, honestly. So a little bit more niche, but I think this can be really useful for people who are parents, people who are kids, people who want to have kids, and people who just want to better understand families and aspects of themselves. So hopefully this is still helpful. And even for those of you going back to college, maybe aspects of this can be pretty useful as well. We'll see. But really the focus that I have on my mind is that question that we'll ask about the influence of school. So most people I meet value education. The struggle that I see also with most people is who is the educator. And now, man, the political environment around education is sad, I would say is the word. Just sad. A lot of people are really scared about sending their kids to public school. A lot of people are really not sure about the universities that they're going to. And, there does seem to be certain elements that are bent. I don't know if you guys can hear the dog barking like crazy. We'll find out how well that carries over and how well I can focus. Oh, and look at this. I'm like super distracted today. Brightness incoming. Well, oh wait, that even make a big difference? Kind of does. Makes a difference on my eyeballs feeling uncomfortable. Derail. School. A lot of people have opinions about it, is essentially the thing I'm trying to get at. And I think it's important to have opinions on education because there is a line between education and indoctrination, education and uselessness. There's kind of like that learning area, and then indoctrinating kind of on this end of the spectrum, learning and then wasting time on this end. So some people go too far into you have to believe what we believe as opposed to just learning how to think and learning how to learn. And I know people are opinionated about that too. To the other end of like, well, just full discovery learning. And experiential learning is extremely helpful. That's why it's important to encourage kids to play and to go an experiential route. And anytime you can learn with play, you're going to learn better. So training kids how to play. So if you're a parent listening and you really emphasize like chores and learning and getting stuff done and your kids aren't playing a lot, stop doing that. Let them play. That's extremely important, especially as they're in that elementary school and younger period of time. So all these schools I see, and I don't think it's happening as much now, but there were schools that were cutting parts of recess and PE to focus on test scores, which is insane to me because the tests, or I should say the research shows that increasing those things will improve test scores because kids need to move and be active. That's a human thing too. Us as adults, when we're active and moving around, we're going to be more cognitively present as well. But it's especially true for kids, and having room for imaginative play, rather, is really important. So don't cut PE in recess. I think actually most schools would benefit from longer PE and longer recesses every single day. And a lot of schools are not doing that. And I think it's an issue of being concerned about test scores. And I mean, we have data on like what kids need is not that debated as far as I can tell. School lunches need to be better and recesses need to be longer, making sure there's space for PE, creative time. Oftentimes class ratio is, and I know sometimes it's not like an issue of learning and research, sometimes it's a funding issue and pressure from people who don't understand stuff. So it's not really a criticism of everyone, more of a systemic criticism of how things are set up. So, but there does need to be focus time for learning and a healthy stress to be challenged to improve. And that's where, other people can fall on the wrong end of that spectrum. So anyway, what I'm getting at is one thing that we know about anyone who is concerned for what are my kids learning, or what am I going to go home and learn. The influence that school has is almost nothing in comparison to the influence of the family and a healthy life. So if you have young kids, this is why it's really important to have conversations at the dinner table. So one, with your family, as often as possible, having your meals together. Dinner is the common one. Lunch is often very difficult for people. Breakfast, depending on other things, but specifically, if you're in that like 5th, 6th grade and under, that elementary school, you need to be having dinner with your kids pretty much every day and have conversations. So stuff that they're learning about at school, talk about it. If you have beliefs as a household beliefs are really important. So everything that you see politics-wise, belief systems in terms of philosophy, religion, lifestyle, things like that, that stuff needs to come from you and needs to be taught by you as a parent or caregiver or guardian. The influence of the school is not actually that strong. People will get really concerned a lot. But really, if you are creating space to engage and interact with your kids and creating an interaction space where they can trust you, they will listen to you. That's why it's also important for you to bring up topics before the school does. So a big one is sex education. A lot of opinions about when that should be taught, how it should be taught, what they're teaching. And I think those are fine. And I think there's a very good argument for whether the school should even be doing that. But so much that comes in different households, where some houses are overdoing it and the kids are being borderline sexually abused because it's talked about too explicitly. That's a very real thing. All the way to the other end, where we're not using any appropriate language ever for sex and autonomy, and we're never bringing it up, and we don't allow it to be talked about. Both of those are harmful. And there's a sweet spot in the middle, and there's actually, I think, a pretty big sweet spot where you can choose how you want to talk about it, and it's all pretty healthy. I don't think there's an exactly right way. There's lots of different ways that can look, but I do think a really important part is that you talk about it first. So if things are going to be brought up in school, try to bring that up with your kids first. Try to talk about things at the dinner table. Try to proactively address topics of politics and sex and any other really hot button issue. You don't have to be super explicit. Everything has a age appropriate level. You think about this with family members passing away. There's a way that you can explain that to a 3-year-old, and it's not the way that you'll have that conversation with a 13-year-old. Neither require lying. You're not necessarily lying to a 3-year-old when you explain it to them at a 3-year-old level. And I actually vote against that. Parents who don't want to tell a 3-year-old that someone died, and like, oh, they're just gone for a little bit. You don't do that, because that's lying, and that's tailoring them in a direction that is against reality and truth. But there are ways to discuss death and existential topics that are not just impactful on a kid. And we have different levels of maturity and development, and people need to be spoken to at the level that they are at, not the level that we were at. Not the level that we're at or the level that we think they should be at. Speak to people where they are currently at. And you can do that. There's a very good series. I don't remember the channel. It might be Wired that does it on YouTube. And if it's not Wired, I apologize for getting that wrong. But they'll have experts on who will explain things at 5 different levels. I think it's often like elementary-ish, maybe middle school, high school, college, and like postdoctoral or something. I might be getting one of those wrong, but 5 different levels. And can they explain like black holes, essentially, I think is one of them. Like explaining that to someone of pretty much equal intelligence and knowledge. And can they explain it to an elementary school kid what a black hole is with a general idea? And all of it is telling the truth and teaching at the level that you're at. Just like explaining algebra to someone. There's a difference between basic algebra and college algebra and advanced algebra and all these things, and as it expands into bigger math. But you start from the place of understanding. And if someone doesn't understand the math prerequisite for algebra, you start earlier. But you can still be teaching elements of algebra. Chemistry is a really good example too, because you can look at the periodic table and you can look at, I forget all the the names for it, but when you do the like molecule mapping and put all the stuff together, you can tell how much I've retained from that. But looking at like a compound and stuff like that, and seeing all the little pictures, we've all seen it or done it in high school. You don't necessarily start there with a 4 or 5-year-old, but you can start by using like hydrogen peroxide or the Mentos and Coke thing and seeing it bubble up and explaining chemical reactions and mixtures, putting a dark colored thing into a light colored thing and seeing, or, a blue and a red colored thing. And if you keep mixing different colors, it turns gray or black. And you can start to explain how mixtures work and how combining things work. And even cooking is a lot of chemistry too, and teaching kids those concepts in a graspable way. And this is what I would argue good parenting is it's seeing where your kid is at and what they need developmentally, and not overwhelming them past that. So again, having way too explicit sex conversations, like if you're teaching your kids about sex by talking about your own sex life with their other parent, that's inappropriate and borderline sexual abuse, because that's not good for them to be hearing that necessarily. But that might just be looking at talking about their body, anatomically correct language of this is what that private part is, this is what that is, don't let people touch you there, you can say no, like encouraging that in really healthy ways to do that. Or if an adult wants a hug and you don't want a hug, your kid's allowed to say no. Don't force your kid to hug relatives or friends. You can see how this makes sense long term, like body autonomy. So that's a prerequisite stage for being able to say no in a sexual encounter that you don't want, is can you say no to a hug? Can you say no to a relative that says, like, I'll give you this cookie if you give me a hug? No, because that's teaching to trade your body for reward. So there are a lot of things, and I know that can be, some people would find even what I'm saying there problematic, but it is how you start to train body autonomy and safe sexual autonomy and being able to say no and yes, and not feel overly pressured. And I think teaching that with kids, to do that with relatives and friends, is a great healthy way to teach that under pressure, because often the expectation is I want to impress or make happy this person I care about. So as the parent, if you're teaching that and you're with them in those environments, and you're the more authoritative person than the grandma or grandpa in that case, and they want to say no to grandma and grandpa, but they're uncomfortable with it, and you're there, you can encourage that no. Like, hey, you don't have to, you can say no. And it happens a lot with like hair touching with people and all that kind of stuff. Just teaching your kids and doing that with them, it's going to teach body autonomy, and that is an extension of sex education. I think we think often very narrow in terms of how that education works, like it's just sex and anatomy, and that's not always true. Just like talking about chemistry, you can start teaching chemistry by teaching cooking or by teaching fun little projects at home, and a kid's not going to call that chemistry, and you're not going to call it chemistry. It's just having fun and learning about mixtures and learning helpful tasks. So anytime that you can find a way to just bring it down to their level and communicate what you believe as a family and encourage them to learn and question things healthily. So, and this is important too. It looks different when we're going to college, but if you're at a college and you're taking a course because you have to, but you're not really all about it, or you're in a classroom that's getting political when they're not supposed to, you can do the same thing by coming home, whether it's friends or family, and just having conversations that are enriching to you and not necessarily finding an echo chamber, but just having space for that to be counterbalanced with people that you love and trust, because usually a sense of belonging is going to be more rooted with family and close friends and community. Some people find those things at college, and that's totally fine. Just a lot of people heading into it, it's not going to be there right away, and those built relationships aren't going to be there. So making sure you have that space somewhere else if you're able to find it, if you don't have it already. So the home life just makes a huge difference is really what I'm getting at. So there, in my opinion, there isn't a lot of reason to fear for what your kids are learning at school. I think there's reason to be concerned at times. And this is coming from someone that has a lot of issues with the public school system, and I think it does a lot of good things, and it's really designed well for certain people. Just like private school or homeschool or charter schools or co-ops or hybrids are better suited for certain learning styles. I was not suited for public school very well. That was harder for me. And certain people are going to thrive in it. And also access to resources. It's sometimes the only place that people are going to get sports and music and creative arts. And sometimes, if we're fortunate, like shop class, cooking, all this home ec kind of stuff, like there's a lot that you can get from there. So they're very important. I'm not anti public school. I empathize with the issues that people see and get scared of, and then the news doesn't usually help. Even if it points out real things, it's usually alarmist, not, oh, here's a potential issue and some solutions. It's always this, oh no, reactive kind of experience. So that's what I mean by I don't think we need to be as, I should have said it this way, we don't need to be as reaction based and fear based as we are, but just knowledge based. Okay, I know my kid's school is doing this, so we're going to make sure that we talk about things like XYZ at home. We discuss it, even being mindful of certain friends at school. As parents, you get to say yes or no to people your kids hang out with. And especially with, I am focusing on elementary school, because if this stuff's not established elementary and before, it gets very hard to establish later. If you've not rooted yourself as, my kids can come to me, they listen, we have a good relationship, the older they get, the harder it is to instill that. They have to then choose that later. So a lot of people who start parenting in a way that's inviting after their kids hit middle school and high school, it's way harder to get that healthy influence in, because the kids have autonomy and they're lashing onto other figures because that window was missed. I don't mean that as a downer, and it's still possible to repair that, but they build more and more autonomy. So the earlier you can establish an authoritative disciplinary structure of, I'm the parent, this is how we do things, and I'm absolutely the person that you can come to for safety, not because I said so, but because I have proven that when you have come to me, and when people have harmed you, I have stepped in to protect. Words are not enough for that, and kids learn through actions a lot. The best example I think of that is if you tell your kid not to lie, and then you lie, you're teaching them to lie. Or you're teaching them that they can be hypocrites, which is lying. Lie to appease other people and then do what you want anyway. A really common example that I see a lot, and people act like this isn't a big deal, but I really think it is going to the movies and going to dinner. There's a lot of discounts for 12 and under, and certain age ranges there. And if you have a 13-year-old and you are often saying, don't lie, maybe you have a 13-year-old and they look a little bit younger, and you're at the movie theater, at the restaurant, and they're like, oh yeah, they're 12. You're teaching your kid that lying is okay when it benefits you. And you could have told them 100 times before, don't lie, but when they watch you lie about their age, in my opinion, you kind of derail all of that, and you destroy a lot of respect and credibility that you have with them. And you steal autonomy from them, because you're saying, I'm going to speak for my kid, and I'm not even going to speak on their behalf. I'm going to lie so that I benefit financially from it. They don't get to speak right now. So you're teaching a lack of autonomy. It's a really big mess, and don't do it. Don't do it. Don't lie. So that's a really good, to me, it's a really easy example to use. So you teach by actions primarily. Speaking is good. We're a type of family that does this. I want you to come to me if you need anything. Then you better respond well when they come to you in need. You really need to. And if you're working through your own stuff and that's hard, that's fine. Just make sure you're actually working through your own stuff. There's not an expectation of perfection. The expectation is that you're growing as a parent, and that you're hopefully bringing your kid up in growth as well. Not an expectation of perfection. And most parents they're not ready to be a parent. Like you talk to any parent, they'll almost always tell you how they matured by becoming a parent. That's great. You just have to be willing to step into the maturity that comes with that. So, and I don't think it's good for people to just say like, oh, I'm never going to be ready, because you're not. You just have to take that leap eventually. So most people, I think, are more ready than they think they are. And other people also need to know that you're never going to be perfectly ready. So just have kids. Minus good counsel from other people that are saying like, hey, you're really not in a healthy place. And yeah, so just take that as an encouragement. I know I mostly spoke to parents, of which I don't know how many listen, but this is also, I think, something that can be really helpful if you know parents, if you're paying attention to the school system, and you are yourself going to school, what you're doing at home and with community and people who love you and that you feel like you belong with, that's so much more impactful than the school that you're going to. So really focus on community and people and healthy relationships. It is way more powerful than school or work or other things. Even when those things can be really draining or really life-giving, they are not the end all be all. And they can start to turn into that in a healthy way if it's a really good relationship at work, and then that can be a safe and belonging place. But you're only going to get that if you have shared values and you guys are moving in the same direction in life, because that's what a community does. It's shared values. It's iron sharpening iron, so to speak, of like we're helping each other get to where we want to go. So that can be found at school and at work as well. It just, like any relationship, will take time to form. So if you're entering into a new experience of that, it's going to be hard. And then as kids, that belongingness, it can't happen at school the same way, because you need certain level of input from authority and adults and caregivers, and that is not the role of the teachers. At times they try to fill that in moments of need, which I applaud them for, because that's a lot, but it is not really going to happen. As you get older, that can start to happen more as you have your own autonomy and maybe find alternate communities. But in those younger years, 12 and under, that's going to be home for most people. So, which can be a positive or a negative depending on home life. But yeah, that's my thoughts for back to school stuff, and why you shouldn't be horribly concerned. If you have issues with school, voice them to the school. Put your opinion in. I think it's always helpful to respectfully add a tally to how you feel about that, including positive. I think you should also tell your schools when they're doing good things. A lot of schools, I think a lot of teachers hear a lot of negative, and that's often just how we are. We complain often before. A better example is I think people are more likely to write a bad review than a good review, and there's a lot of studies on that. It's like you gotta have extreme experiences. You don't get a lot of people who write middling reviews unless they're just in the habit of doing reviews. So also make sure you tell schools and teachers when they're doing a good job. If they make a change and you like it, to voice that. As much as people are like, government and schools don't listen. They do, just maybe not in the way that other places do. So yeah, voice your thoughts, positive and negative, and then also make sure that you are educating your kids healthily at home, having conversations, asking them about their school day, eating dinner together, engaging them, encouraging them to come to you, proving through action that they can, all that. So that's it for today. If you're interested in any therapy services, feel free to email me in the contact below. If you're in the state of Kansas or Missouri, I'm happy to help. If you're outside those boundaries or just not interested in working with me but need help, I'm happy to get you connected as best I can to outside sources and potential alternate resources as well. So hoping for a good week for everyone and good mental health all around, and I hope anyone who's involved in back to school that it's better than you expected and going well overall. So best of luck to the fall season for everyone. See ya.